Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good to see everybody joining. We are going to start off with a Woo Clap event. So I've put the link both in the Moodle course and in the chat there. So please do join that Woo Clap event because we're going to do a little bit of voting and a little bit of discussions during today's session. I'm going to wait for about another 5 minutes to let everybody join that wants to join, and then we will get started talking about Moodle Gradebook. All right, we see a few more people joining here. I just want to welcome everybody that's recently joined. We're going to be talking about Moodle Gradebook today, and I have put in a WooClap event in the Moodle course on mountainmoot.com where you can join, or I should say moodle.mountainmoot.com where you join this session. There's a link in there to this WooClap event, and then there's also a link in the chat that you can click to join without having to go back to the Moodle. So I'll just go ahead and send that out again just so everybody sees it. So hop in there and we'll just getting a quick snapshot of who's from where. So we got a lot of higher ed, some middle school and elementary school. Nobody from the private side yet. That's okay. All right, I see we're still having people join, so I'm going to wait about another minute. Those of you who are just joining us, if you want to join our WooClap event, we've got a link in the chat. I'll send it out again to everybody. And there's also a link to the WooClap event where you can vote in the poll that's on the screen that is taking place right now. So looks like we got most people in there. That's great news. A lot of higher education. That's great. That's where I am. But this presentation is by no means limited to higher education. I think Moodle Gradebook's a really powerful reporting tool for everyone in all different areas. And it's not just about numbers. It's not just about percentages, but it's also about subjective feedback. And you can really use some processes inside of or some settings, I should say, inside of Moodle Gradebook that will allow you to provide subjective feedback, even to the exclusion of numbers if you want to. So Jay Mitchell asked a question in the chat. There are 2 sessions I was interested in participating in. Is it possible to go to later on and watch the recorded session? Yes, we are posting them in the Moodle courses that you can access from the front page of the Mountain Moot. So you can always go back and watch any of the sessions that we've had so far. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to just start with a general idea of what it's like to be a student. Moodle is a student-centered platform, and I, as a pedagogist, am a student-centered teacher. So the first thing that I always think about when designing my courses is the student interface. How's the student going to interact with the content, and how can I make it easy for them to get my feedback and to take action based on that feedback, which is more important even than viewing the feedback. So too often, especially in higher education, we have students who are at the center of this graphic that you're looking at, but they have teachers and faculty that are providing them course materials and grading scenarios that are different from course to course to course. You can imagine how frustrating and how much anxiety it causes and how much even anger it can cause if you see those 3 little icons there in the middle, to have to figure out for every different course a different grading calculation, right? So maybe you've got one teacher that provides percentage-based grades through a computer there in the top left-hand side. You know, if they give you the syllabus and say, you know, you should be able to calculate your grades from the syllabus, that might be true that you should be able to calculate your grades from the syllabus, but that's not really the course content. And when you take into account that that student might be dealing with several other teachers that are maybe using letter grades, or they're using sum of grades, or they're using just completion tracking, you know, represented by these 3 other icons here, it can be really frustrating and really confusing for a student to figure out what their grades are in all the different courses that they're in. So what's to be done here? Well, the question is, do we want to force all the teachers to grade in the same way? My answer to that is a resounding no. The teachers should be able to grade in diverse ways, and they should be able to modify their grading calculations, and they should be able to modify their grading output according to what's appropriate to their content. So Moodle Gradebook does this for our students. So this is here in the middle. This is our little Carol Moodle icon, you know, a little Carol C with a mortarboard on it. But when you use a learning management system like Moodle to provide grades to students, you preserve the faculty's freedom to change the way that they grade from course to course to course, but Moodle can provide the students a uniform interface that makes it easy for them to understand where they are in the course and to take action based on the feedback that they're getting from these teachers, even if those teachers conceptualize grading and feedback in a wide different variety of ways. So the good news about this also in 2020 is that whether or not your students are located together in a classroom, or they're located in all kinds of different places across the world or maybe across town, because of COVID, because of social distancing, that Moodle Gradebook interface, that display that they're getting where they see their grades, is going to remain the same, whether they're in the classroom or they're at home. So using Moodle Gradebook or any similar grade distribution platform can it really go a long way to reducing student anxiety and student confusion over progress and feedback, whether they're in the classroom, out of the classroom, or somewhere in transition in between. So it's never been more important to have a gradebook system that delivers grades and feedback to students in a uniform and digital way. So I want you now to submit one word that describes your experiences with Moodle Gradebook. If you've had experiences with Moodle Gradebook, I want you to be candid here, and I want you to just go ahead and submit one word. Unknown or confusing. So I assume unknown might be they haven't used it before. Oh man. Oh, you guys are stressing me out here. Confusing is the big word. Tedious, painful, overwhelming, frustrating, time consuming. Don't touch it. Sounds like somebody's got don't touch it. Difficult, convoluted. Oh, somebody's got positive. That's great. I feel quite positive about Gradebook actually. Faculty don't trust it. That's huge. That's a really big issue, I think, that we're seeing, because now the reason that confusing and time consuming and overwhelming and faculty don't trust it, the reason those come up is because Moodle Gradebook is so powerful and flexible that there are such a wide variety of options for how to use it, that without some planning and some training, if you just go in and start using it, it might not meet your expectations by default. And that's a good thing, because it's empowering teachers to have diverse orientations to grading and to feedback. So I hopefully I can elucidate why that is a little bit in this presentation. There are some others here. There's positive, awesome, powerful, instant, versatile. Those are the words that I think of, having troubleshot Moodle Gradebook for hundreds of faculty over the past several years. So I tend to have a really positive view of it, and I hope that that this word cloud might look a little different by the end of this presentation. So I want to talk about different ways that we can set up the Moodle Gradebook. So as I said earlier, you might be a percentage grader, you might be a letter grader, you might be just a completion grader, and you might have a sum of grades. I've met a lot of faculty and a lot of teachers who say, I have 1,438 points for my course, and it's really easy to understand because 620 of those are for homework, but then 444 are for exams, and the students can just add them up, and it makes it really simple. And so, that's for me, and from the student perspective, I think that's just as complicated as saying homework's worth 40%, quizzes are worth 30%, et cetera, et cetera. So let's talk a little bit about how Moodle can display the same set of grades differently to different students. So here's the first way. This is the way that I tend to think about grades. You can see that we've got homework 1, homework 2, homework 3, and this is actually a student view of an actual gradebook that I set up, of course with a false student, but just to give you an idea of how it can look for your students on the other end. So we've got a category of homework, which is worth 20%. All of the grades are displayed in percentages, and then the subjective feedback is off to the right of those grades. So when the student goes into Moodle and clicks grades, this is their display if I have set up percentage weighted categories. This is the same set of grades, but displayed a little bit differently. Take a look at this and see how that's different. So this student has a different grade than the previous student. I want to point that out, because what's happening here is there are 300 points in the homework category, there's 200 points in quizzes, and there's 600 points, or I'm sorry, 100 points in final exams. So you'll notice that in the exams category here doesn't weigh very much. Even though that student got a perfect score on the final exam, they still get a C minus because it's subsumed by those other grades, right? So we've got homework really taking things over. But if I go back to this other display, this is actually the exact same set of grades. You'll notice that this student has an 82, or what would correspond to a B, because what we've done is we've weighted that exam 50% of the overall grade. So that way I can have one exam and still grade it out of 100, but then give a percentage weighted category to the students. So Rashida asks, can the first one have a letter grade as well? Yes, you can actually, all of the columns that are in these reports, I'm going to show you how to turn them on and off from the student point of view, so that if you want to display percentages and letters and weights, or you don't want to have weights but display the sum, I'll show you all how to do that, because Moodle's reporting tool is really super powerful, and a lot of people don't dig into it because it takes some time to learn. So here's another way that I might display grades. Let's say that I wanted to display just the letter grades and the feedback. Maybe I think students are too worried about numbers and I just want them to see the letters and focus on that subjective feedback. This is what that would look like. Again, this is the same set of grades. I've just taken them out of the categories and I've given them, just letter grades so they can keep track of their progress that way without getting down to the minutia of, I'm 0.5% away from a B or whatever. I know a lot of teachers get frustrated with that mentality. And then finally, if I want to just go completely off the tracking and comparison route, I can hide all of that other stuff and I can just give students subjective feedback about their progress on assignments. I've met a few teachers who teach this way and are very committed to the idea that students shouldn't be worried about grades, they should be worried about feedback. I was listening to a talk by Martin Dugiamas, the creator of Moodle, a few years ago, and he said something that stuck with me. Grades are for the institution and feedback is for the student. So like we need to give our institutions numbers because that's just how our institutions are built. But if you want a student to succeed and you want a student to grow, they need to see your feedback and they need to take action on that feedback. And so if you want to really front and center feedback as opposed to numbers and letter grades, then that's this feedback area is going to be for you. Diane, that's a great question. I am going to get to it. She's asking, how do we get that subjective feedback in there? There's a couple different places to put it, and I'll show you where that happens. Right now, though, I want to ask everybody a question. Which style of gradebook do you prefer? Do you want just subjective feedback? Do you want letter grades? Do you want points-based, or do you want percentage categories? And you can click on these images to bring them up. So, for example, this is the letter grades one. And this is the points-based one. And let me not limit you to thinking about Gradebook in this way, where there's only these 4 different ways. These are just 4 examples of how you might choose to put together the Moodle Gradebook, just to give us an idea of what's possible. But it's entirely possible and perhaps likely that you'll do something that's none of these 4. And that's what I love about the Moodle Gradebook so much, is it empowers teachers to do what they want to with the gradebook. So it looks like we've got a lot of responses for the points-based. That's really common. Like I said, I meet a lot of teachers who think about grading this way. Percentage categories are great for to make it easy. I use percentage categories, and I'll tell you why. I like to take away and add assignments throughout the course of a semester. And sometimes what'll happen is if I'm using points-based and I'm using like a sum of grades method, if I take away one of the homeworks that we're supposed to add up to 1,000 points out of the whole total of 2,000 or whatever, then it throws off the whole grading calculation. But if you have percentage weighted categories, you can just add and remove assignments at will, and it doesn't change the overall grading strategy. You're still being consistent with your syllabus. So I'll keep that in there. Rashida, that's a great question. Each teacher can do something different. And even where I work full-time at Carroll, teachers do all kinds of different things, and it's all within the same Moodle. So it's not that we force people to think about it one way or another way. Teachers can do all kinds of different stuff, and I'll show you how that works. So I am going to flip over here to the Moodle Gradebook session, and I would invite you, if you want to kind of click along with me in your Moodle Sandbox course, and you can set up a gradebook for yourself there. That way you can figure out where some of these options are, and that way you can learn how to set up your gradebook, when you go back to use it in Moodle. Rashida, that is another good question. Can students do a what if grade with Moodle? Not at the moment that I'm aware of. I will give out some Moot coins if anybody has a way to do that, because I would like to use that in my own practice. But I think there are improvements coming to the gradebook sometime that may address that sort of issue. But I am not 100% certain about that. But that's such a good question, Rashida. I'm going to throw out 50 Moot coins for you. So good questions and good comments. I'm happy to give out Moot coins too. So yeah. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Rashida says she doesn't like that because students show the what if grades to their parents rather than their actual grades. That's very clever. And Karen, you'll find your sandbox in the My Sessions drop down at the top of Moodle. Here's my 2020 sandbox course, for instance. And you can go there and click along with me. So to begin with, to get to set up your gradebook, there's 3 cogwheels up here at the top in this theme. There's also, if you're not using the Fordson theme that we're using right now, you'll find grades over here in this drawer in the standard Boost theme. So I'm going to go to Gradebook Setup, and that'll take me to a screen where we see I have in here an OPI renewal unit takeaway digest. I'm going to ignore that for now, just so that so you guys know. But to get started at the very beginning, you might want to add a grade item. So I'm going to add a grade item, and I'm going to call this homework 1. And I'm going to use maximum grades of 100, but you can always change your maximum grade here if you want to give, 10 point, 5 point, 20 point homeworks or something like that. You can always do that there. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save Changes. And then you'll notice that homework 1 has been added here to my course. Now, what I'm going to be using here are what I like to call dumb grade items, which means that they're not that they're dumb to use, but that they aren't smart in the way that if you set up an assignment or a quiz on the Moodle front page, those items will feed grades automatically into the gradebook. So I would refer to those as like smart items. But what we're using here are just numbers in the gradebook. So if you're doing stuff offline, you're doing stuff in the classroom or whatever, or you're going to manually grade them, this is what you'll use. So let's add another 2 grade items by clicking Add Grade Item at the bottom. We're going to call that Homework 2 and Homework 3. So now we're starting to see our grades stack up here in the gradebook. I am going to actually uncheck this weight here. And I'm going to save changes, and we're going to notice what happened to these weight columns right here. So why, can anybody guess here in the chat? I'll give a little Moot coin reward. If anybody can explain what is happening in this weights column. How does this weights column, what is it doing? What is it there? So notice I've got a 1-point assignment, and then I have 3 homework assignments. Why are those numbers in that weight column? All right, because it's out of 100, splits them up. I think the winner goes to Sarah. It is basing the weights on the maximum points. That's a really good answer. Came in really quickly. So Sarah, you're the winner there. So what it does is it takes, you'll notice that we've got a 1-point assignment up at the top, and we've got 100-point assignments down here in the gradebook. So the 1-point assignment is worth literally 1% of what these other assignments are worth, right? So if I want to change that, all I have to do is check this weights column, and I can put in 25 for each of these, and now Moodle's going to calculate these as equally weighted, even if the max grade is different. And this is the tool that we're going to use to set up percentage weighted categories. So if you have 300 points in your quizzes category and only 100 points in your exam category, you can still weight that exam category a little bit higher. So speaking of categories, I'm actually going to uncheck these before I continue and click Save Changes. Speaking of categories, let's add a category to the Moodle Gradebook. There's an Add Category button down here at the bottom. And so let's call this homework. And I click Save Changes. And then you'll notice I have a little folder here. So I can put these graded items into this category. So I'm going to just check these 3 homeworks over here on the right-hand side. And then I'm going to use this drop down at the bottom to move selected items to homework. And so now you see that homework is worth 99% of the grade. And then you've got 3 equally weighted assignments inside, which are all worth 33.3 repeating percent of that 99%. So the Moodle categories operate like Russian dolls that are kind of nested inside of each other. So you can go smaller and smaller and smaller as far as you want to. And that will allow you to do all sorts of crazy things. I'm going to keep it a little bit basic for right now, and I'll answer some questions at the end about specific gradebook setups. So in the meantime, let's add another category. I'm going to call this quizzes. I'm going to add 2 more grade items. We'll call them quiz 1 and quiz 2. Now, if you already have your categories set up, notice that you can go ahead and put them automatically into the grade category here at the bottom of Add a Grade Item. And this is true for any of those smart graded items that you might add on the Moodle front page, like a quiz or an assignment. You can select the category in advance as long as that category is created. So I'm going to go ahead and click Quizzes there and Save Changes. And now we'll see that quiz 1 is inside of this quizzes category, and it's worth 100% of that category. So another quick opportunity to win some Moot coins. In the chat, whoever's first to tell me the answer to this question is going to get the Moot coins here. Except Rashida and Sarah are not available because they've already won. I am going to add another quiz, and it's going to be worth 100 points. What is its weight going to be inside the quizzes category? Whoa, look at that. You guys are on the ball. Okay, who was first? Lisa. Okay, Lisa, you get the Moot coins for that one. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to show you how that works. So I'm going to throw the quiz in there. It's going to be worth 100 points. I'm going to put it in quizzes category and then click Save Changes. Voila, the number is 50, just as it looks like most people were on the ball there. So good job, guys. You're totally on point here. Okay, I'm going to add one more category just for fun. We're going to call it exams. And I'm going to put the one more grade item in there. And we're going to call that exam. We're just going to call it final exam. So we're only going to have 1 grade item in that exams category. So now I'm going to weight this to 0 because we're going to ignore it. So if you ever have an item in the gradebook that you don't want to be part of the calculation, the easiest way to do that is just to check the weights box and make it 0. So that's another little trick that you might want to know. Oh, Dolores, good question. What if you want to put in extra credit? That's a great question. So what I would do to make something extra credit is I would click edit settings for this grade item. And then there's an extra credit checkbox right there. So I'm going to add that as extra credit and click Save Changes. And then notice what happens to the weights here. This is weighted to 100% now because that's 100% of the category. But this one, because it's 100 points, you could actually get 200% in this category right now. That's bonkers. You don't want to do that. I don't know, maybe you do, but that's too much extra credit as far as I'm concerned. But let's say that I wanted to have only 1% extra credit. I wanted to make it a maximum of 101% for that quizzes category. It's really easy to do. You just check the checkbox here and put in a 1 and click Save Changes. Now that extra credit item is, if they get 100 points in that extra credit item, it only will give them a maximum of 1% extra credit. So it allows you to manage extra credit and limit it to that. So I'm going to actually uncheck that because I'm going to use this in a minute here and let me save this, and then I'm going to undo that extra credit rating that I did because I want to use those two items in a minute. So edit settings and remove the extra credit checkbox. Great. Okay, so now, yes, I am just adding these into the gradebook. They aren't activities. So I'm going to show you how to grade these dumb grade items, and then we'll add an activity later, and I'll show you how it fits into this. So let me do the grading here first, and then we'll get into some of those other things. So if I want to grade a student, I'm going to go to this top link up here, and I'm going to go to Gradebook. And now we'll see all of you are showing up in here, and we've got all these grades ready for you to earn them, right? So I am actually going to go to the single view, and I am going to grade homework 1. So I'm going to give you all a grade for homework 1. Let's say I'm going to use a trick here because we have a lot of people here. I don't want to go through and put in different grades for everybody. But I'm going to use this trick here at the bottom in single view. I'm going to check perform bulk insert, 4 empty grades, give you 100. And when I click save, it's just going to give everybody 100. So you guys did great on homework 1. I'm so proud of you. And as we calculate this up, we're gonna see that everybody's gonna have 100 in this area. Now, one of the things that's great about the, so yeah, I just set 91 grades in no time. So the great thing about this is that if I had been using an assignment activity or I had been using a quiz and somebody didn't complete it and they had an empty grade, I could just come in here and use this single view to distribute zeros to everybody that didn't complete it. So you don't have to actually go through and put in all the zeros, nor do you have to use that whole grid thing. So single view makes it really easy for you to do that. And notice we've got the feedback column here. I'm not going to give everybody feedback, but Lori, I might say, great work. So great work, Lori. And this is where I can add that subjective feedback for all the students. And that's where that comes from. So if you were just going to be using subjective feedback and you were using what I call dumb grade items, then you could just put them in that area and they'll show up for the students in the gradebook. If you're using the assignment module as you're grading, there's a feedback section that'll pipe it right into the gradebook, and I'll show us that at the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And so Lori will see great work when she goes in and does that. So I want to show you one other thing. Let's see, I'm going to pick on Lori and I'm going to show you all of the grades that Lori has available here. So if I just wanted to look at Lori, I can check her in the single view and, in this select user dropdown. Remember, I'm still at Gradebook and single view. and I can see all of her grades. So notice these grayed out ones are the exam totals. So those are calculated grades. And they don't want you to enter grades in there because Moodle's calculating them. You can override them if you want to, but I would not suggest that you do that. So let's say that Lori did really well on homework. She did awesome on homework. She was all right at the quizzes. But then the final exam was just a real struggle. I'm giving her a 45 out of 100. Sorry about that, Lori. And I could, of course, enter feedback here for this individual student. So when I go ahead and click save now, she now has 495 out of 600. That's the way that Moodle Gradebook is going to show it to us. If I want to see what Lori sees, I click the user report up here. There's a user report tab. And I select that user from the dropdown. So Lori is who I'm picking on today. And so this is what she would see if she came into the gradebook. She's got an 82.5%. That's easily explained because she did really well on the homework, which accounts for 300 points out of 600. And she did all right on the quizzes, which account for 200 points out of 600. But she did really poorly on that exam, which accounts for 100 points out of 600. So overall, she's hanging in there because I have not weighted the categories yet. So here's the next point where you get an opportunity to earn some moot coins. I am going to distribute moot coins to everybody that answers this question correctly. So pay attention here. I am going to go to Gradebook Setup again. And this is where we started, Gradebook Setup. And I'm going to change the homework weight to 20%. I'm going to change that quizzes weight to 30%. And I'm going to change this exam category weight to 50%. All right, now in WooClap, I'm going to launch this question. And I want to ask you, will this student's grade go up or down? So head back over to that WooClap menu and tell me, will this student's grade go up or down if I change the category weights as shown? I'm going to show this Gradebook setup one more time to everybody. Are her grades going to go up or are they going to go down? It looks like the overwhelming consensus among our active participants is down. So remember, she had an 82.5 before. And if I choose to save these changes, I need to lock this poll before you guys see the actual answers. So you cannot vote anymore. 88% of you think that the grade is going to go down. Remember, she had an 82.5. If I go to the View tab and I'm in the user report and I check out what Lori sees, overwhelming consensus was correct. Her grade went down because I gave a higher weight to her weakest category. So before, that category was only worth a 1/6 of the overall grade. But then I went in and made it half of the overall grade. So she's being more heavily penalized now because I weighted that category. And it makes sense, right? The final exam is usually one of the things that's weighted heaviest out of all of the other activities. So I'll distribute those moot coins after I've got a track of who voted what. So you'll all get a 10 moot coin reward for answering that correctly. So now I want to answer some questions that happened. There were a lot of them, so I might not get to them all. But if I go back to Gradebook Setup, somebody asked, how easy is it to drop grades? That's a really common question, and Moodle Gradebook does have an answer for that. So if I go to this homework category, let's say I want to drop one of them, I just edit the settings for the homework category. And for some reason, it's in this advanced menu here. I get to drop the lowest 1, or maybe I want to drop the lowest 2. One thing that people run into trouble with this is if they have a category, you can only drop the lowest grades if all of the grades in the category have the same maximum value, because otherwise Moodle can't figure out, well, do you want me to drop the lowest raw grade or do you want me to drop the lowest percentage grade? So if you're going to drop the lowest, make sure that all the grades in that category are uniform, because that way the percentage grade and the raw grade are all the same to the calculation area. And you'll know if you try to set this up, this will be grayed out if you have varying grade totals inside of that grade category. So I'm not actually going to do that. I'm just going to leave that there. Let me look at some of these other text expansion scripts for the feedback. I do not know the answer to that question, but if you're using the assignment module, which I'm about to demo, you'll have a lot of space for the feedback. So that's a really good question. It depends on how, for Valerie, she asked if roles and instructors are all non-editing teachers, do they still see all of these options? It depends on how you have the non-editing teacher role set up. I think by default they cannot, but I may be incorrect with that. Can Moodle Gradebook be imported into PowerSchool if that is what a district requires? The answer to that technically is yes. I'm not aware of all the plugins that are available to do that. I know that it's being done somewhere. I've never actually done it myself, but a database is just a database at the end of the day. So it should be possible to do that even if you can't find a plugin for it. And that's everything that I've got here. Oh, how do I change the homework total to 100? That's a good question, Eric. So you can do that, but you have to change the calculation method. And this is probably a good time for me to talk about calculation method, or aggregation method. I'm sorry, Katie, that's the correct word. Aggregation is right here. And what I'm using is the default natural, because that gives us the weights and the sum ability all at the same time. It's my preferred aggregation method. But if you want to scale them all down to a certain number, you could use mean of grades, and then that will make the category total editable to a maximum grade of 100. And then I save that, and you'll see it's going to take a minute to recalculate the grades. And then you'll see those are all just being averaged up to that 100-point grade. So that's the answer to that question there, Eric. But I'm going to change this back to natural, just to keep us in the workflow that I had set up. Okay, so now here comes the question, how do we do assignments? How do we do quizzes? How do we do these sorts of things? If you head back to the front page of the course, which is confusingly in this case called Moodle Gradebook, and you add an assignment, for instance. So let's say I want to add an assignment. I'm going to call this homework 4, because we've already got 3 homeworks there. Write a great paragraph. I recommend that your prompts be more robust than that. I'm not going to talk about the rest of the settings here in the assignment module, but I am going to show you in the grade area. I can set the maximum grade, and I can also choose the grade category, and this drop-down is populated by the grades of categories I've already created. So I want to add this into the homework category, and I'm going to do something a little, you know what, I'll start with simple direct grading, and then we'll make it weird on the next one. So I'm going to save and return to course. So now that I've done that, I've got homework 4 here. Students can come in and submit a paper, or you could have them submit online text. But if I go back to the gradebook setup, you'll notice what's happened here is homework 4 is automatically there included. And so whatever grade I give in homework 4 is going to flow right over to the gradebook. Now, the grading interface and assignment, I think, is great. So I'm going to click homework 4, and I'm going to grade somebody. You'll see there's nothing here for anybody. I'm going to continue to pick on Lori just because I can. So there's Lori. And so now if Lori had submitted something, I would see her options here. And so I would give her a grade out of 100, maybe a 95. Hey, you did a great job, but left out a citation. Okay, so that's my feedback, right? And as I save and show next, I'm not going to notify Lori about this. So as save and show next, it'll tell me changes to the grade and feedback were saved, and it just kicks me right to the next user. So I can kind of roll through everybody's assignments. And then when I go back to look in the gradebook, then I will see, let me go to gradebook view, and I'm going to do that user report again and look at Lori. And then you'll see right here, it's given her that 95%, and it's given her that feedback that I typed right there in the assignment module. There's another thing. I promised to make it a little bit weird, so I'm going to add another assignment. And I'm blowing through this stuff really fast, guys, but this recording is going to be available later, and I'll definitely talk to you if you have other questions. So this is homework 5. Paragraph. And this time, instead of using simple direct grading, I'm going to use a rubric. I go ahead and click Save and Display. And now it's going to ask me to define my rubric. I'm going to create a new one from scratch. Once you make these rubrics, I could do a whole nother hour on rubrics. I'm going to make one just really quickly. Once you make rubrics, you can use them over and over again. So poor, good, great. I'm going to add one more criteria here, maybe grammar. Poor, good, great. All right, I'm going to scroll down and click Save Rubric and make it ready. And what's going to happen here is, well, I need to title it. Sorry, you have to name your rubrics. So what's going to happen here is when I go into grade now for homework 5, and I'm going to continue looking for Lori. Let's say that I think she did good here on this, and she did great on this. Then I say, hey, work on, what was it, style? See the rubric feedback in the assignment. Go ahead and save those changes. And then you'll see, even though it's 0, 1, and 2 points here, the maximum grade on this assignment is 100. So when I go back and I look at, Jay Mitchell asked, can you add comments right on the rubric? Yes, you can, and you can add comments that are specific to each criteria. So now if I go back into the gradebook and I view the user report as Lori, once again, we're going to see that oh, I forgot to categorize that. So here's that as homework 5. I'm going to go back to Gradebook Setup and recategorize it real quickly just by checking here and adding it to the homework section. Okay, so there she is. And if I look at Lori again, she'll see that my my grades and feedback have flowed right down to the gradebook. So again, this user report by default has calculated weight, grade, range, percentage, feedback, all of that stuff. Let's say that that's not what I want. Let's say that I want to have only the letter grade available, or maybe only the percentage available. That happens again in setup, where we started in setup, but actually in this tab right here, course grade settings. Down here in the user report, these are what the student sees. And you can change what the student sees by changing these settings to meet your expectations. So let's say that I only want her to see the percentage. I'm going to hide grades. Well, I'm going to leave feedback there because feedback's important. But I'm going to hide the weightings. I'm going to hide the average. It's set to default hide the letter grades already. I'm going to hide the contribution to course total. I'm going to hide the ranges. And I'm going to click Save Changes. Now, when I go back to the user report, and again, looking at it as Lori, now all she sees are the percentage grades and the feedback. So that way I can change what my student sees, even though when I'm grading it, it all looks the same to me. By modifying what goes out in that user report, you can control how the student interacts with their grades according to your expectations. So let's say that I wanted to go back, she's got this really low grade, but if I go back and change my setup to undo all these false weightings and let it float again, I'll click Save Changes. It's going to recalculate those categories according to the totals in them. And so when I go back to look at Lori's user report now, we'll see that her percentage grade at the end went up because I reset it back, and now that final exam that she really struggled on, its weight has dropped because it has a lower total point value than all the other material in the gradebook. So I'm going to take a look at these questions here, but in the meantime, what I want you to do is I want to change I want to re-ask this question, but I'm going to, let's see. I want to get rid of all of these results. Oh, I've forgotten how to do that. Never mind. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to ask you this. Is Moodle currently available for your organization? Go into WooClap and vote on that. And we'll see how many of us are currently using Moodle, and then I'll take questions in chat, or if you raise your hand, you want to ask a direct question that I missed in chat, I'm happy to do that too. If you use forum ratings with the sum of grades rating options, it will auto-calculate within the forum grading. Oh, I didn't talk about forum grading. They added in 3.9 or 3.8 the ability to, I had that rubric for the assignment. I can actually apply that rubric to forums, and you can grade the whole forum. I'm going to take these last 2 minutes here to demonstrate that, so everybody can see it. Deb asks, what is the difference if you put the exam in a category or not? In this case, there is no difference. If you've just got a single grade item, that's a great thing to point out. You don't really need to put an exam in a category, but if you want to have it look like this for the student, it will need to be in a category, because otherwise that exam would be sitting at this level over here rather than nested inside of the exams. I personally think that what we're looking at right here makes the most sense. So I would put that single item in the category just for the user interface point of view. So let's see, where am I? I lost where I was. What are your thoughts on using scales? Some of our facilitators use a needs improvement, proficient, advanced, but then Moodle assigns proficient to be 50%. That's a really good question. And if you're not familiar with scales, I'll show you that in setup, Scales has its own tab. You can create scales that are semantic. So you can give students, for example, in a forum on a dropdown, a good post or bad post or great post or whatever, and it will translate those into grades and put them in the gradebook. But in the gradebook to the student, it will just
kind of neat. Really, I could have done yesterday, today, and tomorrow all working out at the gym.
Corey, I muted you again, Corey. Anyway, we've got custom scales here, and if you want to add a new scale, you can do that and say, so that starts with the lowest grade and moves up. So poor, good, great, and I'll just call this Ryan's test scale. And I'll demonstrate this in a grade item in a new assignment module really quickly for you. Homework 6, we'll call this. I am going to change the grading type to scale. I'm going to use Ryan's test scale, and I'm going to put it in the homework category, and I'll save and display. And so in this way, if I go into grade, again, I'll pick on Lori. Then you'll see where the grade is. You've got this scale that shows up as a drop down instead. So I'm going to give her a good, I'm going to say, all right, work. And I'm going to save the changes to that assignment. That can work also in a forum. If you enable ratings on a forum, there's a drop down where you can define your own scale. So I am going to go again to Gradebook, and we're going to look at Lori's user report just to see what she sees. So it gives her a 50% right here because the scale automatically starts at 0, goes to 1, goes to 2. So the more scale items, the more you see there. So she's got a percentage here, but remember, if I go to setup and I actually go to course grade settings and I display for her the grade instead of the percentage, it's going to show her those words. So you see there now, instead of a number, she just gets the letters. And as long as I hide the percentage in the gradebook, in the student view of the gradebook, she's not going to see a number, she's going to see the words. So that is that's one way to sort of use those scales but get rid of the number tied to them, is by modifying the way people look at the user report. So that is 2 minutes over my allotted time. I want to thank everybody for joining me. I hope that Moodle Gradebook is a little bit less intimidating now. And if you want to talk more about it, I'm going to be in the lunch sessions, which start at noon, and I will be just sitting at a table and hanging out. So if you have a specific question at those tables, I can actually share my screen, or you can share your screen, and I could walk you through a particular calculation because there were a lot of questions that I missed in the chat. There was a bunch of stuff going on, but I don't want to ignore you guys, and I want to help you, you know, use Gradebook the way you want to. And once again, since my screen is showing, I'm going to go to moodle.mountainmoot.com, and you'll find it under Thursday, virtual cafe lunch, and you click this link and it'll take you into the course. You might have to sign up for it if you haven't already. And then you click here to join the virtual cafe, and it'll look like this. It'll launch your remote conference, and then you just double click on any of these tables to sit down and join. So you can zoom in, you can see that I'm sitting right there. And other people will be sitting at all these other tables. So come in and hang out with us, have some good informal conversations with other people at the conference. And thanks again to everybody for participating. You are what makes Mountain Moot awesome for us and for everybody else. So thanks a lot, and I will see you at lunch.